Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome. Before we get started, a quick reminder. This week, we're here, obviously. We're already here. For the next 2 weeks, there will not be class. Next week is Pesach, and the week after is the day after Pesach. And so I'm assuming everyone's going to be knee-deep in chametz, and so we're going to take a break for that week as well. So we will be, the next time we're going to be learning Tanya together is going to be, let me quickly pull up my... the next time we learn Tanya together is going to be April 17th.
Will you put that in an email?
Yes, I'm going to send an email. Send an email to remind everyone. The next 2 weeks we're off, and then we're going to be back on April 17th. We're in chapter 19, which chapter 19 is a direct continuation of the discussion that we started last week in chapter 18. And that is, we sort of entered a new era, a new section of the Tanya. For the first 17 chapters, we understood, first of all, that we are all striving to be a Beinoni. We are all striving to have that status. Because what is a Beinoni? A Beinoni is someone that every single moment, they withstand the test, which means that they have a test at every moment, or at any moment, I should say. They're challenged, they have the temptation to sin, they have the temptation to do something wrong, but they don't. They manage to stand strong and never actually give in, never actually do anything. And then the question becomes how? How does the Beinoni do it? Right? Because then, as we've discussed, you can do anything once or twice. But if you want to do something consistently, there has to be an emotion behind it. The only reason why we use an example, the only reason why people go to work every day is either they love their job or they hate starving to death, right? Those are the two choices. There has to be an emotion, a reason why we continue doing things continuously, day in and day out.
Maybe multiple.
Maybe 100%, maybe multiple. And so the question is, what is the motivation, what is the emotional component for the Beinoni? How is it that he manages to survive, to pass every single test, day in and day out? And as we're going to continue to discuss, this could be every single morning waking up with that same pull, that same temptation. I want to rob a bank. And yet every day he manages to withstand it. And the question is how? And so
he's expending energy, whereas the tzaddik does not expend any energy.
Absolutely. The tzaddik is beyond this. The tzaddik doesn't have these temptations. The Beinoni very much does. And we discussed within the Beinoni, some have stronger, some have soft. Everyone's different. But by and large, the difference between a Beinoni and a tzaddik is not in their thought, speech, or deed, not in their actual action, because both of them are successful. Both of them don't do any averos and do lots of mitzvos. So what is the difference between the tzaddik and the Beinoni? Is the Beinoni has a temptation. And therefore, we need to find that motivation. Because the tzaddik's motivation, the tzaddik is so in love.
Yeah.
Jake, everything okay?
Yeah, I was looking for another Tanya over here.
Oh.
I can't find it.
No evil inclination.
No,
Yes.
No, I have the other one. There was another one here. Anyway,
okay.
sorry.
No worries. The Beinoni has no... the tzaddik has no evil inclination. He is so completely in love with God, so completely full of awe and fear and dread in God's presence. There's no battle. He has no temptation. The Yetzer Hara is gone. The Beinoni has that struggle. And so we're trying to dig down and figure out what is the Beinoni's secret to success. How does the Beinoni manage to be successful in his struggles, in his temptations? And the first way we described this as the long way, because this is a lot of work. And that is by meditating. And as we discussed, based off of the verse, Ki karev elecha hadavar ma'od b'ficha u'b'vavcha la'asosei. This is the foundational text. This is the verse that the whole Tanya is based on. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the entire Jewish people, us included, this thing, being connected to God, doing mitzvahs, not doing averos, is very close to you in your thought, speech, and action. Not in that order. And as we discussed, how is it so simple? Right? How can Moshe say that this is very close to you? So the first way we explained is, it's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. All you have to do is meditate. All you have to do is sit and think about how great God is. Think about that God has a relationship with you. A plus B equals C, that you want to connect to God. Now, the fact of the matter is that the Beinoni is not going to be able to have a very, very strong intrinsic love and fear of God because he's human. And when I say he, I'm referring to all of us. We're human. We're always going to like cake more than God. As we brought from Rabbi Levi if God would have put the temptations in a book and godliness on the street, then everyone would be successful. But it's not the way the world works. What can the Beinoni do? He can conjure up, he can evoke what we called a intellectual emotion. Right? And as we discussed, someone doesn't necessarily love their job, but they love the fact that it pays them and they can pay their bills, and therefore they develop an appreciation for the job. Or as we discussed as well, someone can be in court, and they don't fear the judge. He's another person. If they met on a dark street corner, who knows who would win? But the fact of the matter is, in this circumstance, the judge holds their fate in their hand. And therefore, by thinking about this isn't just some random guy. This is the judge who decides my case. And therefore, you can develop a feeling, an emotion intellectually. And that is the first way the Alter Rebbe described how the Beinoni sits and meditates and conjures up an intellectual emotion. But that's really, really hard. It's not easy. It's simple. The math is very, very simple, but the actual doing it and implementing it is very hard for numerous reasons. Mainly, that it very much depends on your ability to think about God. How much do you know about God? Right? Because the more you know and the deeper you can build that appreciation, the bigger the emotion will be, the love and the fear. Most of us, our knowledge of God barely scratches the surface. And so therefore, the emotion is not going to be that strong. And even if you do, you have to be able to have your heart be refined enough. As the Alter Rebbe discussed, how most of us, because of our sins, we're pretty coarse. We're pretty unrefined. We're pretty, as in Yiddish the expression is grub. We're just unrefined people, and to have an intellectual thought have an effect on our emotions takes a lot of work. And the Alter Rebbe took issue with the word me'od. Moshe Rabbeinu, back in that verse, says, it's very close to you. You can't say something is very close to me if it's a whole lot of hard work. Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible for me to run a marathon? Absolutely. Is it close to me to run a marathon? Is it easy? No. It's doable. It will take a lot of hard work. And therefore, starting in chapter 18, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to the other way, the other emotion, the other way that we have a love and fear of God. And the truth is that this is really the exact opposite. And in order to explain, in order to describe this emotion, we started last week with the foundation of what and where do we get this deep hidden connection, this ava mesuteres, this hidden love. Where does it come from? The answer is it comes from our neshama, our soul. As we discussed at length with a little Kabbalistical flair, the highest point of our neshama, of our soul, is the level of chachma, which we always understood chachma to be in wisdom, right? The first thought. But really, chachma is beyond wisdom. Chachma is that level where you have an idea, but it's so ethereal, it's so hard to grasp, it's really beyond you. Bina is the process of unpacking that chachma and making it real and making it tangible. What does that mean for our relationship with God? We have a deep, intrinsic relationship with God that goes beyond logic, goes beyond how much we can understand. It's just there, by virtue of the fact that we're a neshama. And where do we get our neshama from? As an inheritance from Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. That's where we got our inheritance from. And the thing about inheritance, as we discussed, is that you don't have to do anything to get an inheritance. The tiniest child is an inheritor, right? We said there's three ways to acquire something. You can buy it, you can get it as a gift, or you can inherit it. Buying or barter, or whatever, means you have to have something to exchange. You already have something of equal or greater value that you can exchange for it. Even receiving a gift, people give gifts because they expect something in return, or because you have something, they like you, right? There's some pre-existing thing that you've done. the thing about our inheritance is it has nothing to do with the recipient, except for the fact that the recipient happens to be born into the right family. And that's all of us. This Ahava Mesuteres, this hidden love, has nothing to do with how much you know, how much you studied, when the last time you meditated was, how many mitzvos you've done, how many averos you've done. None of that is relevant. There's only one question about this Ahava Mesuteres, and that is, are you Jewish? Do you have a neshama? Do you have a soul? And if the answer is yes, then you have it. That was last week. This week, the Alter Rebbe continues to discuss what exactly is this love? What exactly are the emotions that the neshama is feeling? And where is it? How do we relate to it? Where is it on a day-to-day basis? Where is it when we need it? Etc. And the Alter Rebbe is going to start off on page 2 with the famous verse. The verse is Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam. Right, top of page 2. Well, the Tosfos beer Tzarech Levayer Heitiv Mashakosov Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam. To further elucidate the nature of the hidden love, it is necessary to clarify the meaning of the verse. The soul of man is a candle of God. This is a very famous verse, and throughout all levels of the onion of Torah, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of very, very interesting explanations on this verse. Here, the Alter Rebbe is going to zoom into one of those descriptions and say, how are we similar? How is our neshama similar to a candle? Perush, Sheisrael Kruyim Adam Nishmasam Hi Lamashal Ka'ar Haner. This means that the soul of the Jew, who are called man, as the sage remarked, you, the Jewish people, are called man, are, by way of illustration, like the flame of a candle. What's one thing about a flame? It flickers.
It's what?
It flickers. Flickers, right? A flame is never at rest. I mean, these days with very, very clean burning fuels, they've managed to change that. But for the most part, a candle flickers. Why? Whose nature is always to flicker upwards. A candle is constantly struggling against the wick. Where does the candle want to go? Where does the flame, want to go? Back to its source. And here we get into, again, a tiny paragraph of Kabbalah. And that is, we've discussed in the past how there are 4 building blocks of creation. The 4 basic elements, Kabbalistically speaking, are Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar, earth, water, air, and fire. And these basic elements have somewhere where they come from. I don't know what that means. I haven't reached that level of Kabbalistical study to be able to really understand what does it mean that there's behind the sun there's some sort of source for fire. But the flame isn't limited by my lack of knowledge of Kabbalah, and it knows that's where its source is, and it wants to go there. Mipnei sha'or ha'esh chafetz b'teva liparid ma'apsil udavka b'sharshay l'mayla b'yisayt ha'esh ha'kali shetachas galgol ha'yireach k'mesh kosav v'etzchai. For the flame of the fire intrinsically seeks to part from the wick that holds it and to unite with its source above in the universal element of fire, which is in the sublunar sphere, as explained in Eitz Chaim. We'll explain that more in our Eitz Chaim class in about 30, 40 years. But for now,
Flame is also light, and Hashem is light.
100%. There are so many, this idea of Ner Havai Nishmas Adam, that our soul, there's the idea of light, there's the idea of that many flames create one big torch. There's dozens of explanations. But here the Alter Rebbe is comparing our soul to a flame in the way that a flame constantly struggles against the wick. Now, let me ask you a question. If Mr. Flame gets his wish, and he detaches from the wick, he'd lie. He's done. The flame only manages to exist because it's being held down by the wick. Let's say that it manages, to escape containment, it escapes, and the flame does in fact fly all the way back up to its source. What happens at its source? It gets reabsorbed. Looking at the source, again, it's hard to imagine this with the Kabbalistical thing, but if you imagine a flame, if we substitute, instead of the Kabbalistical source for fire, let's say the sun. If this candle manages to fly into the sun, does it exist anymore? It is so nullified and reabsorbed in its source like it doesn't exist. And yet, that's the one thing the flame is dying to do, pun intended. It's dying to get back to its source. Even though it means that it's no longer going to exist physically, and even spiritually or metaphysically, it also no longer exists, because once it's reabsorbed back into its source, you can never tell that it was there before. Continuing on page 3. Va'af she'al yedei zeh yichvev le'ya'ir kulum lamata v'gam lamayla b'sharshay yizbatel arib b'mtziyah kirsharshay. Although thereby, by parting from the wick and becoming part of its source, it would be extinguished and would emit no light at all. Here below, right? It's done. The candle gets extinguished. And even if it does manage to go up, also above, in its source, its identity would be lost within that of its source.
Hinduism, going back to nirvana, and they go, which is actually what happens, because when we die, we go back to our atoms.
I don't like directly referencing Avodah Zarah in our classes, but I mean, they get their ideas from somewhere, right? Like these concepts, the biggest lies, the worst lies are the ones that have a kernel of truth. Because then you latch onto the kernel of truth and then everything builds on around it. This idea of that the neshama, or we're still talking about the flame, what the flame wants to do is get reabsorbed in its source. And that's why it's flickering. That's why it's struggling against the wick, because it wants to go back. Even though it, I hate to use this word because it's not really what we're describing here. But in a certain way, this is a suicide pact. This flame doesn't care about its own life, and the reason why, because it's, God forbid, suicide is a insistence on not living. Here, the flame doesn't care about itself. It doesn't care what happens after. It doesn't care about the consequences. All it wants is to get reconnected with its source. Even though logically it doesn't make any sense. No. It makes absolutely no sense logically, because it's going to be, if it gets reconnected to the source, it won't exist down here and it won't exist up there. Afal pikain, nevertheless, yet this is what it desires by nature.
It's the same with the soul, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's where the comparison of ner havaya nishmas adam. Why do we compare the soul to a flame? Here the Alter Rabbi is discussing how they share this tendency. Just like a flame wants to get reabsorbed in its source, no matter the consequences, no matter what it's going to mean for its actual existence, so too our soul. Kach nishmas ha'adam v'chein b'chinas ruach v'nefesh. Just as the candle constantly seeks to reunite with its source, so also the neshama of the Jew, and also the levels of ruach and nefesh, as we discussed. In all of us, there are 3 levels of our soul: nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So the verse is only saying ner havaya nishmas neshama, right? But it applies to all levels of the soul. All of them want to be reabsorbed in their source. What does that mean for the soul? So for the fire, we barely understood it. But for the soul, hopefully we'll be able to unpack this a little bit deeper. From the moment a fetus is created, there is a soul assigned to that body. A soul is chosen and given a mission to go down, occupy that and live
Before birth.
before birth. It happens very so. The exact levels of how exactly this works and at what stages are a long discussion. But as soon as there's a fetus, as soon as there's a child in existence, there's a soul that's assigned.
At birth or before birth?
So it fully inhabits the body throughout life. It starts at birth and then it continues. But from the moment of conception, there's a soul assigned. If anyone ever ordered a car, I know especially from Tesla. So if you order a car, it's months out, there's a big Yom Tif, a big celebration the day you get assigned a VIN number. Right? This is your car's number. The car doesn't exist yet. Nothing exists yet, but you were assigned a VIN. Very exciting. And that's what happens as well. From the moment this body is a child comes into existence, even before birth, there's a soul assigned. Now that soul.
Does Judaism say what age a fetus gets a soul?
So the fetus doesn't have a soul in the way that a human does until at least birth. But above the body, above the body, whatever you want to call it at that point, above the embryo, there is a soul. The Talmud describes it as a candle that's sort of hovering above. There's a soul there even if it doesn't inhabit the body in the same way. And again, the implications for different medical questions are, not the purpose of this class. Does the soul want to be there? Does the soul want to be living in a body? The whole idea, I mentioned the idea during pregnancy, but during life, for the 70, 80, 90, 100 years that the body is alive, the soul inhabits the body. Does the soul want to be there?
It's the only way the soul can accomplish anything.
Yes. It's the only way the soul can accomplish anything, and therefore the soul goes along with the plan. But the soul itself is struggling against the body. Just like the flame struggles against the wick, it's there. The soul on its own is dying to get out of there and go back up to heaven and get reunited with God. Continuing on page 4.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry.
Yes.
When somebody dies,
Yes.
how long does the soul hang around?
So here, after someone passes away, there are levels, like everything. Certain parts of the soul depart right away. Other parts of the soul stick around, again, in stages. Everything in Judaism happens in stages. Until burial is one stage. That's where we have the idea of shmirah, of guarding the body, because there's a soul right there until the body is buried. Also another reason why burial is very important in Judaism, because it allows the soul to have peace and to go up. Certain parts of the soul stick around for a year, which is why there's a custom that close relatives don't visit the gravesite for the first year. And other parts of the soul, the part that was most embedded in the body, sticks around forever, which is why there is a concept of visiting a gravesite, because it's not just the body that's decomposing. There's parts of the soul that are there as well.
Which will be resurrected at
Yes.
some point.
Yes. So, continuing on page 4. Chavtza v'cheshka b'tivis liparid v'lotzis min aguf u'dafka b'shorshim makari b'Hashem chaya chayim baruchu. The soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and depart from the body and to unite with its origin and source in God, blessed be He, who is the fountainhead of life. Now again, just like the candle, what happens if the flame were to succeed in its mission? It would cease to exist, both physically and quote-unquote spiritually. And that's true for the soul as well. Hagam shetiyeh ayin ve'efes v'tizbatel sham b'metzias legamri v'lo yishem memena me'uma me'mehusav atzmus ha'yishin. Although thereby it would become null and void, and its identity, right, it would become null and void, because as soon as the soul leaves the body, what happens? The life is over. Right? That's the end of the life. So the soul would have no existence down here anymore. And even in its source, what happens if the soul gets reabsorbed in God? It loses its own identity. It loses its special self identity, because it's, again, just like the flame, it's getting reabsorbed in the greater source.
And does it come back with the resurrection?
So what we're talking about here is not that the soul doesn't exist anymore, but it loses its identity in the way that it had a self-standing, separate from God identity. Right? It exists outside. Right? When a body is inside, when a soul is inside a body, it exists. It has its own existence. We could say it has its own presence. It has its own things going on. It has its own story. When the soul gets reabsorbed back into godliness, it goes back to its source. It still exists, right? The word of, we'll read the English and then we'll see. Though thereby it would become null and naught, and its identity would there, in its source, be completely nullified, with nothing at all remaining of its original essence and self. The original essence that it had down here would be nullified. It still exists and still separate, and you're right that when Mashiach comes, it gets resent down. It still exists, but it loses all sense of self, all self-identity. Even so, even though that's the consequences for departing its body, nevertheless, it is its will and desire by its nature. Now, the Alter Rebbe just puts a quick disclaimer. Until now in Tanya, for the last 18 chapters, the word nature has always been a negative thing. Right? Nature is something that you follow. There's nature, and here we're saying nature is not a negative thing. We're using the term nature to describe something that you would do that's above logic. There's no logical reason for the soul to want to do this. Continuing on page 5.
Just a minute, please. I am having difficulty with the top of page 4 when we say the soul yearns to separate itself. The soul is constantly there's a bond and attachment between Hashem and the person, but for the soul to want to leave during life, to leave the body.
Especially when the soul's having a great time.
Yeah.
Is the soul having a great time? That's really the question. The answer is, it's not logical. That's exactly what we're saying. It's not logical, right? Because as Len keeps on saying, the soul's doing its mission here. Now is the best time for the soul to do anything. It's the only time the soul can accomplish anything. The soul is getting upgraded. The soul is able to, when it goes back up, it's going to have so much more. And as David is saying, you have a connection to God. What are you complaining about? But the fact of the matter is, the soul wants to go back to its source. It doesn't care about any of this. Even though it's self-destructive, even though there's no logical reason for it, the soul wants to go back from where it came from.
And which is where?
God. We're just going to use that term loosely because we can start getting very, very Kabbalistical about it and where exactly souls come from Chachma and what levels. We're going to get that a little bit later in the chapter. But for now, we're just going to say God. The soul has an intrinsic, super logical, when I say super, above logic, relationship with God. It just wants to go back.
Could we say that the soul constantly wants to go back because of the sinning that's going on?
Not necessarily.
And the negative
not necessarily.
Thoughts.
Because even this, because that's again the idea that it's not about the fact that the soul is suffering. The soul can be having a great time, but it's not home. It's not where it belongs. It's not in its own, we can imagine it. It's not in its own bed, right? No matter how amazing the vacation is, no how amazing the time we're having, we're always happy to get back to our own bed. What do you mean? But it's where I belong. And that's what the soul is going through as well, at a much, much more intrinsic level, because I know plenty of people who would love to stay on vacation 20, for the rest of their life. But here we're talking about something much more fundamental and much deeper. The soul, not because it's suffering or not because it has disconnect, just the soul wants to be back where it belongs. The soul wants to go back to its source. And therefore, its entire life, the soul is being held down by the body. It exists, it's powering the body, but it's straining against it. And if we, we'll read the first line on page 5.
Does the body affect the soul?
Yes.
What did you say?
Wait, say again?
What did you say?
Does the body affect the soul?
That's what I
Is
thought.
that your question?
Right.
Yes. And that's a beautiful discussion about the partnership between body and soul. And we discussed it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the value of mitzvos. The fact of the matter is the soul can't do anything on its own. The soul can only try to get the body to do things. So by the body doing a mitzvah, that's affecting the soul. And that's why at the end of the day, it's usually, hopefully, worth it. Because the soul comes down for 70, 80, 90 years. And at the end of it, it goes back to a higher level because it's done, hopefully, a lot of mitzvahs. But here we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about every moment that the soul is not in its source, sitting with God, in God, whatever you want to call that, it wants to go there. Is it logical? No. On page 5, V'teva zehu shem hamush.
At some point, are we going to be discussing the fact that what effect body can have on the soul at some point
Yes.
later on?
Yes.
So we want, okay.
Yeah. V'teva zehu shem hamush l'chol davar she'ena b'bchinas tam v'das. Nature is an applied term. We're not saying nature as in a bad way, that, it can't, it's something that it should grow out of. Until now, nature has always been something that you struggle against. Your nature is to want cake, and you should struggle against that and want God. That's what we're talking about here. This is the good nature. Because it's not nature as in natural, it's nature as in above logic. Is an applied term for anything that is not in the realm of reason and comprehension. V'gam kan, hakavana sheyotze v'cheshek zeh b'nefesh, einu b'chinas tam v'das, v'seichel musag v'muvan, ela l'maylam hadas v'seichel hamusag v'muvan. Here too, with regards to the soul's desire to unite with its source, the inference of the word nature is that the soul's will and desire is not based on reason, knowledge, and intelligence, that can be understood, but rather it is beyond the grasp and comprehension of rational intelligence. This is beyond understanding, right? Let me ask you, why does someone naturally want cake? Can you explain why? Sometimes you can say, as a kid they never had cake, so now they really want it. But sometimes, right, why does someone want chocolate more than vanilla? It's just, it's by nature. It's not logical. And anything that's above logic is called our nature. It's something that we have inborn. It's a natural trait that we have. Now, Kabbalistically and speaking, where does that come from? So as we mentioned last week, all of this relationship with God, what part of our soul does it come from? What part of our soul does it live in? It lives in a level of our soul called Chachma. The highest level of our soul that is above understanding. Understanding is Bina. What's above Bina? Chachma. It's above, there's some, we discussed at length last week about how this is the very first emergences of an idea, of a thought. It's not a thought, it's not something you can understand, right? If someone's trying to think about a hard problem, and they're sitting and struggling, and they go, I think I have it. At that moment, before they unpack the idea that they just had, if someone disturbs them, they lose it. Right? They don't really have it. They can somewhat start to grasp, and that is where this love lives, because it's not logical. And here's the very important caveat, a difference between the first type of love that we described until chapter 17, through chapter 17, and that is a love that is 100% based on logic. The whole process of building up that intellectual love is you have to start with logic. Understand God, understand yourself, understand the world, and by combining all of those meditations and understandings, you develop feelings. It's based on intellect. This love is not based on intellect. It's above intellect. It's naturally there. It's an intrinsic, naturally there love. In fact, it's the opposite. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Logically, the soul shouldn't want to destroy itself. Logically, the soul should want to follow the rules of self-preservation. And yet it doesn't. Why not? Because beyond understanding, beyond logic, it has a love for God that is overpowerful and wants just to return and become one with God. Now here's also we have a very important disclaimer. Just because the soul wants something doesn't mean it's the right thing for the soul. The right thing for the soul is to stay in the body and live out a long and healthy life of doing lots and lots of mitzvahs. In fact, 2 people in history that we know that followed this, that gave in to that natural desire of their soul to return to God, Nadav and Avihu. Aaron's 2 sons, we're in these Torah portions now, so it's like Aaron the high priest, Moshe's nephews. Aaron had 4 sons, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Isamar. What happened? On the opening day of the Mishkan, Nadav and Avihu were so inspired, they were so enraptured by what was going on that their souls departed. And that is a bad thing. It's pure, it's spiritual, it's holy, but it's bad. Why is it bad? Because our mission is to live in this world doing what we're supposed to do, which is why the soul stays put. Just because the soul wants to do something doesn't mean the soul actually does it. But the fact of the matter is that the soul has a natural inborn desire to return to God, to become unified, reabsorbed, and connected with God.
So you wouldn't say that suicide is the soul overcoming the body to return to God. I'm going to overgeneralize and say for everyone, suicide is a tremendous tragedy where someone's issues, whether mental or physical or financial, whatever it is, overcome their nature and force them to do things that no healthy human would ever do. I wouldn't blame that on the soul. I'd blame that on a chemical imbalance, on something else. There's something clearly wrong here
Because the soul, to say that a regular person is so enraptured by this feeling that it caused them to actually act out in this world wouldn't make sense for the reason that we're about to explain for the rest of the chapter. By raise of hand, who feels this feeling on a regular basis?
So you would say Nadav and Abihu knew what was going to happen to them, but they couldn't control themselves.
Nadav and Abihu were, this is not coming from, I wouldn't say this, but the Orach Chaim in Chumash describes how they were for them, they were super, super holy and so they couldn't contain themselves. As opposed to most people who, God forbid, these days do such a thing, it's not because they're too holy, it's because they're too sick or something else that's causing them to have that struggle. But this feeling, this inborn natural love, it's so inborn. Most of us don't feel it every day. And that's why it's called the Ava Misuteres, the hidden love. Misuteres, like from the word Esther. It's hidden. The word Esther, the name Esther comes from the word of hidden. This love, it's there, we all have it, but it's hidden, which causes a very interesting dichotomy. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss for the rest of the chapter. Really, this love should mean that any time I want to become separated from God, any time there's an opportunity to be separated from God, there's no way I would do it. Because my soul is so powerful and it wants to be connected to God, right? If my soul wants to become enraptured and reabsorbed into God, there's no way it would do something to actively sever that connection. So really, this love should mean that I can only do things and only act on things that are holy and connect me to God. Why doesn't it work that way? Because this love is hidden. This love is not my day-to-day reality. What causes it to spring back to life? When this is at my core. So when something shakes me to my core, when I have a choice, when I am faced with the brutal reality of God or not, that's enough to wake up this hidden love. Which is why, throughout our history, how many people have unfortunately, God forbid, given up their life for God? When faced with a choice, kiss the cross or my sword kisses you, how many Jews throughout the ages were able, no matter where they were on their own level, how much they've sinned and how much they did and didn't know, when a Jew is faced with that fundamental reality of Jew or not, the only possible choice is I'm a Jew. Right? What did Daniel Pearl, right, the reporter, what was his final words? I'm a Jew. I lived a Jew. Now, I'm not going to talk about him anymore because I don't want to speak ill of any specific person. But this person who gives up their life for God, 3 days ago, they may have sinned. 3 days ago, they did something wrong. Right? 3 days ago, they didn't do everything. Why is it that now suddenly they're able to withstand this test and they give themselves up for God? Because when we're shaken to our core, this Ava Misuteres, this hidden love, wakes up. And the truth is, really every decision, right? If we look through life as a binary, God or not, then every time we're faced with a choice, we should be woken up from our slumber. Every time the choice, even if it's not life or death, even if it's just, kosher or non-kosher. Eating non-kosher separates me from God. Why doesn't that wake up my hidden soul? Why doesn't that wake up my hidden love? The answer is because we are great at fooling ourselves. We're great at convincing ourselves that it's not really a problem. I could still be a good Jew. I could still be connected to God, even if I sin. It's not such a big deal. It's just a little sin. It's not a big sin. So usually, as we go through life, why don't I feel this hidden love? Because it's hidden. And I'm fooling myself into not waking it up. But then there's some moments in life that are so strong and so obviously black or white, which really goes back to during the Inquisition. So many Jewish people chose to convert. Why did they convert? Because they said, it's not real, I'm just fooling it, I'm still going to live my life as Jew, and therefore, and this is not me passing judgment, God forbid, on what they did and they didn't do, that's not for now. or ever. But the reality is that by convincing themselves and by telling themselves that this is not such a big deal, they were able to do seemingly pretty horrendous things, seemingly shocking things that a Jew would never do. And yet, by saying it's not such a big deal, right, we're all guilty of this. If you've ever sinned in your life, which, at least talking for myself, it has happened, once or twice a decade, it does happen. How is it possible that we can sin? Because we make that same calculus. We say, it's not such a big deal. It's a little sin, God will forgive me, I'll repent, I'm being forced to do it. There are so many ways we can defend a decision. And so for the rest of the chapter, the Alter Rebbe is going to lay out these points. That first of all, everything that is against God, everything that is not godly, right? Because when we talk about God, godliness, everything revolves around God. When we talk about the other side, everything revolves around me. Continuing at the bottom of page 5. V'zehu klal b'chol sitra d'kedusha she'enei ela ma shenimshech mechachma nikra kadesh elyon. Now, this is a general principle in the whole realm of holiness. Holiness, kedusha, is only that which derives from chachma, called kadesh elyon, supernal holiness. Things that come from chachma, continue on page 6. Habatel b'metzias ba'arin seif baruch hu hamalubash by the einei davar b'fnei atzmei k'niskel. Its very existence is nullified in the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which is clothed in it and is not things apart, as explained earlier. Therefore, this faculty is called chachma, which consists of the two words koyach ma, the power of humility. Anything that is godly, anything that recognizes its holiness, is completely nullified to God. And this goes back to what Len and I were discussing right before class, about how really the difference between something that's holy and unholy is holy things recognize that God is the one creating them, and therefore they're nullified within God. Unholy things think the world revolves around them. This stands in direct contrast to the klippa and sitra achra from which are derived the souls of the Gentiles. Who act only for themselves, saying give, and as Asaph said, feed me, in order to be independent beings and entities separated from God, as mentioned earlier. That klippa is a separate and distinct entity far removed from God, in direct contrast to chachma, whose nature is humility and self-nullification. Yeah?
I'm not following this word, humility and abnegation.
Abnegation means losing yourself within something greater.
Could you repeat that?
Abnegation means losing yourself
Abnegation.
in something greater. Losing yourself. The soul, not the soul. Anything that's holy, what makes something holy? Is that it recognizes God, and therefore, right, in the presence of the Almighty God, it has no self-identity. What does this have to do with our discussion? It continues a little bit. We'll continue on page 7. Therefore, they, in the realm of klippa, are described as dead, for wisdom gives life. Hence, that which is the opposite of chachma lacks life, and it is written, they die without wisdom, i.e. death is the direct result of a lack of wisdom. Therefore, the nations that receive their life force from klippa are considered dead. When we live our life in a self-absorbed reality, that is by definition unholy. If I'm doing something, right, we always go back to my cup of coffee. Why am I drinking this cup of coffee? Am I drinking it because I want it? That it's all about me? Then on some level, it's just klippa. If I'm drinking this because I'm connected to God, and I am one with God, and God wants me to learn and teach Torah. In order to learn and teach Torah, I need some coffee in order to be able to stay up and to have my mouth moving for so long. Then it's holy. Now, for the most part, when we go through life, we experience the it revolves around us. And for certain people, that's their entire life. everything they do is always completely about them. As it says in Mishlei that the daughters or the children of Klippa is hav. Give. They just want, give to me. What were the first words that Esav said when he came home super hungry? Feed me. It's all about me. Klippa is self-absorbed. And that includes V'chein harashayim v'peish Yisrael kredim shabo l'idei nisayin k'l'kadosh Hashem. Just as the heathen nation are called dead, so too the wicked and sinners of Israel are called dead. Because when they go through life, everything is self-absorbed. It's all about me. Except for one case. What's the case where even a sinner, even a very, very wicked person, if they're Jewish, they'd be able to make it about God before they were put to the test of sanctifying God's name. That's the extreme. But until you get to that extreme, how is it possible if my soul in me is so consumed and wants to die for God, it wants to get reabsorbed, it wants to, beyond logic, it to just reconnect with God, how is it possible that I could ever sin? And the answer is that yes, my soul is there, but at best it's in exile, and at worst it's fast asleep. It's not having an effect on my day-to-day life. It's there, it can never be extinguished, but it's...
Esau's soul was the same as Jacob.
This is the challenge when we learn Kabbalah and we learn Hasidus, because a lot of things sort of negate each other. The idea of Esau's soul is not that it was the same as Jacob's. It's better than Jacob's. It's more spiritually potent. But it was trapped in this trap of selfishness. And that's why Esau, as spiritual as he was a pretty bad person. Because no matter how high your soul is, it was so covered up. Right? And that's the difference between Yitzchak and Rivka, that Yitzchak said, let's look at the potential. Rivka said, let's look at the reality. Yes, Esau had a very high soul, but he acted like an animal. And therefore Rivka said, let's focus and invest in Yaakov, who's actually acting on the goodness of his soul. Yitzchak had high hopes and wanted something more, but ultimately we know in this world, Rivka's right. We have to focus on action, not on
But we're saying that some souls come from Klippa, some souls come from Chochmah.
Yes.
Right? So the soul that he got was from the...
So, when we talk about, I don't want to say come from, because as we'll see later on in Tanya, where things come from gets a little bit complicated, because Klippa is not a source on its own. Right? Everything comes from God. Everything is God.
Yeah,
Klippa
is a barrier, right?
is a barrier, exactly. The word Klippa means a shell. So certain things, even though they come from a very high level, they get trapped in Klippa on the way down, and this is the only reality that they experience, is the very selfish reality. And that's what irrespective on where his soul came from, Esau's soul was completely trapped in Klippa. For us, when we live life selfishly, and we sometimes lose focus, we're talking about our day-to-day life. When we go through life and something is about me and not about God, in that moment, that's a Klippa moment. It's Klippas Noga, it's very easy to reverse if I don't say. But the fact of the matter is, let's go back to the extreme. A wicked, sinful person, but they're Jewish. How can they possibly sin? They have this Ava Musateris, they have this hidden love that's striving and struggling to reconnect with God. The answer is obviously, it's hidden. It's very, very deeply hidden. It's trapped even. Continuing on the bottom of page 7. Ki bechinas hachachma shebenefesh halikis im nitus halikus ma'aron tev baruch hu hamelubish ba, for the faculty of chachma, the divine soul, with the spark of godliness from the light of the blessed soul that is clothed in it, heim bechinas galus begufam benefesh habahamis mitzad haklippa shebechol asmali shebelev hameleches hameleshes begufam, are in a state of exile in their body within the animal soul, the realm of klippa, in the left part of the heart, which reigns over them and dominates their body. This exile echoes the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah, as mentioned earlier. Yes, we have a godly soul, but it's trapped. It's hidden. It's in chains. It's in exile. Just because it's there doesn't mean that it's all powerful. Continue on page 8. V'lochein nikras avazu b'nefesh lekis she'ertzeinu v'chesed l'dabek b'Hashem b'chai chaim baruch hu b'shem ava misuteres. For this reason, right, because it's trapped in us, it's there, but it's in exile. This love found in the divine soul, whose wish and desire is to unite with God, the fountainhead of all life, is called hidden love. Why is it hidden? Because we don't feel it. It's not our day-to-day reality. It's not having an effect on us. And this is an 8-chapter section.
And we're not
So for the
aware
next
of its
future...
existence.
What?
We're not aware of it.
We're not aware of it. In our day-to-day life, we are not aware, we don't feel, we're not affected by this hidden love. It's very, very well hidden. Kihi
It's
misuter.
potential, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great word. I'm going to circle back to it in 1 second. Kihi misuteres u'mechusa b'levush sak teklipa l'peish Yisrael. For it is hidden and veiled in the case of the transgression of Israel in the sackcloth of the klippa. Umimenu nichras behem ruach shtus lachtei k'mem razal ina damchei techulu. From this klippa, there enters into them a spirit of folly which leads them to sin. As our sages remark, a person does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters into him. How is it possible for a person to sin? Because his klippa side, which traps his hidden love, if we imagine this hidden love as, in case of emergency, please break glass, right? It's covered by the glass. You can't get to it. Now, if it's a real emergency, you'll walk over and smash it. But imagine if when you came over to the, in case of emergency, please break glass and press the fire alarm, it starts to argue with you. It's just a little fire, just put it out. Whatever, it'll burn out on its own. It's not such a big deal. All right, until the building burns down. Right? There's most of our life, when faced with this choice, even though sinning is the most horrific thing we can do to our soul. Sinning separates us from God. It becomes a wall dividing us from God. How can that happen? Because instead of running over and smashing the glass, we're lulled into a sense of it's not such a big deal. Now, when does that this idea that it's an exile affects it only in certain ways. Intrinsically, it's free. It's always there. The potential is always there. But the action is what's in exile, the actuality of it. Continue on page 9. But this exile, the faculty of the chachma, affects only the aspect of it which is diffused throughout the nefesh and animates it with divine vitality. Because it's an exile, it cannot power the entire body with this great love. What can it do? Ella shadish ve'ikir shebechinas chachma shebe nefesh alekis hu b'meichen ve'enem esalev shelu sak to klipa b'lev chol hasmali b'chinas galus mamish. Yet the root and core of the chachma in the divine soul is in the brain, and does not clothe itself in the sackcloth of the klippa, and is left in the left part of the heart in true state of exile. It's not really trapped. What is it? It is merely dormant in the case of the wicked, not exercising its influence within them, i.e. not creating within the Jew the spirit of self-nullification before God that it ought to create, as long as their knowledge and understanding are preoccupied with mundane pleasures. It's asleep. It's there. It could wake up at any moment, but it's not. It's dormant.
You could say it's not dormant, but the klippa is holding it in.
So that's what the Alter Rebbe just explained. It depends what part we're talking about. The lower parts of this, the way that it actually should affect me on a day-to-day basis, that's trapped. That is being held back by the klippa. But there's a level above. There is a level that is not held back by the klippa. What's wrong with it? It's asleep. It's just not. It's not active. And where does that difference come out? That difference comes out when it's very, very clearly an emergency. To go back to our example, the button is not broken. The button is there and it's working. It's just fast asleep. It's just not, because you're not touching it. Why aren't you touching it? Because you're being held back. Because the klippa is holding us back. Now, if I would to be able to go there, right, this is where the parable starts to fall apart a little bit. But if I know that I have to press the button, nothing can stop me. Nothing can possibly hold me back. And so when it becomes a moment of, it's very clearly life and death, this is very, very clearly God or not God, this is something that the soul, the klippa, can't try to convince me out of and fool me and trick me, that's not a possibility. Then what happens? Then any Jew, no matter who they are or what they've done, is able to withstand this test. However, when they, the wicked, are on page 10, however, when they, the wicked, are confronted with the test of faith, which transcends knowledge, touching the very soul and the faculty of chachma within it, the source of faith, then it arises from its sleep, i.e. chachma reveals itself, and it exerts its influence with the divine force that is clothed in it, its influence being to create a spirit of self-sacrifice for God, as we'll explain further. It's written, the Lord has awakened as one of sleep. In Kabbalistical terms, the relationship that we have with our soul, do we feel it or not, can be described in 3 stages. It's a flame, it's alive, it's powerful, it's a firing flame. It's something I feel on a day-to-day basis. Then there's a coal. What's a coal? Is there a flame there? No. But you fan it a little bit, you touch it, you realize that it's actually burning with fire. It's actually very, very hot. And that's one level down, where the fire is there, but it's not, it's you have to touch it, you have to fan it in order to really experience it. But then there's something else, and that is a flintstone. The ability of a flintstone to create a spark. Can you find it in the stone? If you look under a microscope, do you see tiny little sparks? No. It's 100% potential. It's there, the ability is there, but it's 100% potential. But you know what the flintstone is best for? If you dunk the flame, the fire, into water, it goes out. You dunk the coal into water, it goes out. You put the flintstone in water, as soon as you take it out, its ability to create fire is still there.
But the flintstone needs a companion to make a fire.
Another flintstone. The dynamic of our soul being able to enliven us, our soul being able to give us that passion, exists in these 3 ways as well. For some people, let's say the tzaddik, it's a fiery flame, it's there, it's all-consuming. For the Beinoni, let's say, it's there, right? When they were praying, it was being fanned and it was alive. Now during the day, it's dormant, it's still there. It's like a coal. For the Rishayim, for the sinners, it's like they've been dunked in water. The torch is out, the coal is out, but the flintstone isn't out. All you have to do is hit the flintstone hard enough and you'll see the spark. Now, the important thing is going to be part of the discussion, is that a flintstone can create sparks from today to tomorrow. If there's nothing to catch the spark onto, it doesn't last. And that's one of the challenges that we're going to continue to discuss about this type of love, is that it's a flash in the pan, it's momentary. It has to catch onto something to actually be useful, as we'll to continue to explain. But when push comes to shove, when it is time, it is an emergency very clearly, and we broke the glass and we pressed the button and we hit the flintstone, then what happens? The revelation of Chachma leads even the sinner to withstand the test of faith in God without any reasoning or knowledge that he can comprehend, which would motivate him to sacrifice his life. Right? There's no logical reason to sacrifice our life for God. But it's beyond logic. And to prevail over the klippa and his desire towards worldly matters, both permitted and forbidden, which he's accustomed to indulge and even to despise them. Continue on page 11. To choose God as his portion, as his lot. Even to the extent that he be prepared to offer his soul to God in martyrdom for the sanctification of his name. Right? Now again, the day-to-day life of this person, is he winning the battle? Absolutely not. This is a sinner. In his day-to-day life, the Klippa prevail over him. All his life he was impotent against them, and the rabbis have said, that the wicked are under the control of their heart, i.e. the animal soul of the Klippa situated in the left part of the heart. We quoted this last chapter, or in previous chapters. A wicked person doesn't have control of their heart. They're under the control of their heart. Anything their heart, their desire, they got to do it. And yet this person, for the last 35 years, every single day, he's been under the control of his heart. He hasn't, his godly soul hasn't once popped up. Why is today different? Nevertheless, when he faces a test challenging his faith in the one God, a faith whose foundation is that level of the soul called the heights of holiness, namely the faculty of Chachma, which is called Kodesh, the source of holiness, as previously explained, in which he enclosed the light of the Ein Sof, blessed be He, had a kol haklipas batelim ubatim, v'hayu koloi hayu mamash v'nei Hashem. Then all of the klippas become nullified, and they vanish as though they had never been in the presence of God. When faced with a very, very clear black and white case, the klippa doesn't stand a chance. Because when even this sinner, he's done the worst things possible every day of his life, but when he's able to tap in to chachma, to this inherent love, this ava mesuteres, everything else just falls away. Nothing can stand up to that power. The problem is implementing that in our day-to-day life. Because the thing about an emergency break glass is that when it's not an emergency, we don't have that. And that's going to be a discussion for the next few chapters. But for now, continue on page 10. K'diksiv kol hagayim ke'ein negdei, uksiv kihine evecha yavedu yisparnu, uksiv kimin adegel fnei Asia yevdu, uksiv harim kadoinag namasu. As written, all nations, including the klippas, are nothing before him, and for all your enemies, referring to the klippas, are the enemies of God. All your enemies will perish. And again, as wax melts before fire, the wicked shall perish. The hills, referring to klippa, which are compared to hills, by reason of their heart, are melted like wax. All of these verses indicate how when God's presence is actually revealed, everything else melts away. And that is this Ava Mesuteres. What is this Ava Mesuteres? It's a part in our soul, the highest level. Within Chachma of our soul, there is embedded, or Ein Sof, God's unlimited light. Now, day to day, this doesn't have an effect because it's fast asleep. But when push comes to shove, and when faced with a life or death, a God or no decision, suddenly that roars back to life and overpowers anything in its way. Now the Alter Rebbe will conclude the chapter by describing how this great love, right? We're using this expression love till now. Love is a motivator to do something. Love, right, we always say, love is the motivation to do something. Fear is the motivation not to do something. And whether we say fear as in like I'm afraid that God will punish me, or fear in the more true sense that I'm in awe, I'm just in complete reverence of God that I couldn't possibly think to go against him, but that's always fear. But this strong connection, this strong love, it's a pull. I want to become one with God. I don't care what anyone thinks about it. I want to be. How does that motivate us not to do the wrong things? I can see why that forced me to do all the right things. So the Alter Rebbe concludes, V'hinei Ur Hashem Ein Sei Ur Hashem Yitziv Baruch Hu Hamulus B'chach Nefesh Gadol V'atzim Koichi Kol Kach. The force of the divine light of Ein Sei that is clothed in the soul's faculty of Chachma, as we've been calling it, this Ava Mesuteres, is so intense. Lirgoish V'litches Hasitra Achera V'aklipais Shelo Yuchlu Yigu Afilu B'Levusha. As to banish and repel the Sitra Achra and the Klippa, so that they are unable to touch even its garments, namely the thought, speech, and action that express one faith in the unity of God. When that switch is on, that is so strong that it's strong enough to protect me in every way, thought, speech, and action. V'hainu, Lamed ben Isayin on page 13. דהיינו למד בניסיון למסור נפשי ואפילו שלא לעשות רק איזה מעשה לבד נגד אמרת השם אחד כגוין להשתחווה עבודה זרה אף שאין מימון ba klal b'libai. When I'm tapped into that hidden love, I am so in control of myself that even an action I would never even do something wrong. Even lip service, even pretending, I could never do. Why not? And so we'll read that in the translation. This means that the divine light vested in Chachma enables him to withstand the test of self-sacrifice to the extent that even refusing to do a mere empty act that is contrary to his belief in the one God, i.e. to bow down before an idol, even without acknowledging in his heart at all, in which case it would not be the faith that is challenged, but its expression of faith, of the act of prostrating himself, and even for the expression of faith, a Jew will give up his life. Anyone familiar with the story of Hannah and her 7 sons? It's part of the Hanukkah story. During that period of persecution, there was a woman, Hannah, who had 7 sons. And the king called them in one by one, giving them this choice. And one by one, they gave up their life and said no. Then it came time for the youngest one, a kid. And the king said, all right, I need some small victory. I know that if I ask you to actually worship this idol, you'll say no. But let's do an agreement. I'll drop my ring. You bend down to pick it up. Everyone looking will see that you're bowing down to the idol. You know, I know, everyone who matters, God, you, me, we know that we're not actually serving the idol, but let's just pretend. Just do me a favor, let me save a little face. The kid said, absolutely not. Why? Because when this deep hidden love is in full force, it protects me on every level. I would never do anything against God, even just have a thought against God, have a speech against God, have an action against God, even if I'm not actually giving up my faith. But to say something or to do something that separates me from God on the smallest level, I would never do. This very key point is become important as we discuss how to implement this in our daily life. Because the challenge is waking it up. But once it's awake, there's no way I would do anything against God. So too, he will sacrifice his life, so not to speak falsely, God forbid, concerning the unity of God, even when his words do not reflect his true feeling, for his heart is perfect in the belief of God. Even just to say, God forbid, I believe in another God. I don't believe in it, I don't do it. It doesn't make a difference. I would never have even a speech or even a thought against God. V'zehu nikra dechilu hanichlo b'rechimu, she'ava tivis shabenefesh alikis shebechol Yisrael, shechafetza u'ritzeina b'tiva, lidavik b'sharshem u'makira arin seif baruch hu. This is called the fear contained in love, meaning the natural love found in the divine soul of all Jews, whose intrinsic desires and will is to be attached to its origin and source, the light of the blessed Arin Seif. Where does the fear come from? Because again, we're not talking about that I'm afraid. Right? If I'm so full of love with someone, being scared of them is not what we're talking about. But I am so completely in love that I'm terrified of the possibility of getting separated from them. I'm so in awe. I'm so connected to God. I want to become one with Him. And that is enough of a motivator, right? I'm so in love that I want to become one, which means that I'm so terrified of being separated on any level, in any tiny little fraction. This is called the fear contained in love, meaning the natural love found in the divine soul of all Jews whose intrinsic desires to be attached to the origin and source of life of the Ein Seif, of the blessed Ein Seif. Shemtei avozu v'ratzein zeh he yireya u'mefechtet b'tevi min nega b'ktsas b'tuma v'v'dezer chas shalom sheneged emunas Hashem echad. For by virtue of this love and this desire, it intrinsically recoils in fear and dread from touching, God forbid, even the fringes of impurity of idolatry, which denies the faith in God. On page 14, afilu b'levusheha hachetzenim shehin dibur le'maisa b'li emuna b'leiv klal. Even when such a contact involves only its outer garments, namely adulterous speech and action, without any faith whatsoever in the heart of the validity of idol worship. And that's the important thing for us to remember. In chapter 18 and 19, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to this hidden love. We know where we get it from, our forefathers. We know where it lives. Where does it occupy in our body? The chachma in our soul. What does that mean? That's just words. It means it lives above logic. What is the effect that it has on us? So for most of us, unfortunately, it's asleep. It's dormant. Day-to-day life, it doesn't have a big effect. Because day-to-day, the klippah is so powerful that it manages to cover it up and put it to sleep. What is its power? Its power is that no matter what, no matter who, when it is awoken, it bulldozes everything out of the way. Any sin, any temptation, even the slightest hint of being separated from God is not possible when this intrinsic love is awake. And in the following chapters, we're going to discuss how exactly to do that and how we can make this part of our life going forward. Thank you, everyone. A reminder, next week and the week after we'll not have class. We will rejoin on the 17th of April. Thank you very much.